Call this meeting to order.
Thank you.
Dane Wagner with First United Methodist Church of Monroe, my pastor, has been asked to say the invocation tonight. Would you please come to the microphone and ask blessings, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the City Council and other marvelous servants of our fine community. It is my honor to be here before you tonight. Let us pray. Father God, we praise you. We do. And we thank you for this day, this day of life. Lord, we thank you for all the many grand opportunities that are before us and all the conversations today. Lord, I ask that you just be in the minds and the hearts and the decision-making of all these men and women to keep all the fine things, all the wonderful things we have in this great community called Monroe, and Lord, for all the good and wonderful things that are coming in the future, to protect, to enable, and to be with all those who live in this community, in this wider area now, and Lord, those many that are on their way as well. So Lord, if you would just continue to bless them, their families in this community, it is in your name. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. It means a lot that you were here. Thank you. Yes, sir. Roll call, just looking around, I can tell you everybody's present. Move to the approval of the agenda. We need to amend the agenda to add under new business. Number one would be the annexation of Jean Bell Road, and then behind that would be the actual rezone. So we would renumber and make item number 3 the application of beer and wine package sales in Amoco, and move on down the list from there. I need a motion for approval of the agenda as amended, please.
So moved.
So moved, Mr. Dickinson.
Second.
Second, Mr. Ross Bradley. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Old business, we have 2 committees that need to make a recommendation to the full council for approval of the below items. At the last meeting, we motioned and seconded, and then we kind of all agreed, but we didn't actually go through with the motion or with the vote. So from the airport committee, I want to refer this to Logan.
Yeah, and then I'll have to refer that back to Mr. Garrett, the chair of the committee, who can then call for that vote.
Is there any discussion from last week's meeting? Here's none. All in favor by yay? Make yay.
Aye.
We need a motion.
So
No, the motion was made.
going back, just to clear the air, we had a motion from Councilman Dickinson to recommend the approval of the airport layout plan to full council, which received a second motion from Councilman Larry Bradley. So from there, I believe Mr. Garrett's calling for a full vote on that motion.
So you said we didn't call for a vote on the motion, man?
We had 2 motions. We just need to finish it out with the.
Basically, we need all in favor.
Yeah. There we go.
All in favor by the word aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We recommend layout for full council next. This is the next one.
This was a full council
This
vote,
was-
correct?
Well, this will then be
This
taken
goes in
on the
just a minute.
consent on down the agenda.
Okay.
Two full council. A little bit of confusion there, but we wanted to make sure it's procedurally correct as we move through.
So basically, we make a recommendation for airport layout for the council approval down the minute. Down at the bottom.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The committee's recommended this. You won't make a
Committee
motion
to the
on
council.
what you've already made. This is just the committee recommending it to full council.
So the committee make
Should
a
have
recommendation
voted.
to the full council.
Right. So full council will act on that in a few minutes.
Gotcha.
Correct.
So are we adding it to the consent agenda?
It will go to the consent agenda once we get through the next one as well. We'll have potentially 2 items that will be added to the consent agenda. From there, you guys can have a motion to approve the full consent agenda with the 2 additions, should that pass.
So does that go to item M under the consent agenda?
That'll move down.
That'd be in, and
In.
then the next one will be other.
Do what?
That one will be in, and then the next motion will be other.
Yes, sir. So, along the same lines, Public Safety Committee. Procedurally, we needed to take that back off the table before the Public Safety Committee. This was for the police vehicle lease purchase with Enterprise. It was recommended to the committee that the council, or that to the committee that we approve an Enterprise lease purchase agreement for non-police department vehicles in the amount of $61,054.84. We just need to have the committee take a vote on that, then recommend it to the consent agenda for full
And all
council.
members of the Public Safety Committee, we need to approve by saying of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We recommend to full council.
Great, thank you.
sir.
Now moving to the approval of the consent agenda. I need a motion for the approval of the consent agenda with items N and O having just been added to the committee items under old business. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Dickinson, second.
Second.
Second, Ms. Malcolm. Any discussions?
What is item M of the consent agenda?
The approval of the FTTX pricing.
Okay.
No, it's L on ours.
Was that,
That's
Okay, it's L on mine. I don't have it.
okay, I'm sorry. I have a fiber blower as L.
Mayor, I believe there was a mistyping on the working copies that your office and our office is working off of versus that which was published on the website.
Okay.
Looks like on the website, there's A through L, but it appears on this working copy that there's some sort of typo problem where we only have B as in boy through M as in Mary, and I think that's where the confusion is coming from.
So A for approval doesn't stand for A.
So if I could just clarify for the council, did we have a motion yet on the consent agenda? Or is someone ready to make that? And we'll clarify it by identifying each item that is on the consent agenda for consideration for approval.
Right, we had
All right,
the,
I made the motion.
And I
So
second.
clarification of motion, if I could, council. The motion currently on the floor is for approval of consent agenda, which will include the following items. January 9th, 2018 council minutes, January 16th, 2018 council minutes, January 24th, 2018 planning and code committee minutes, January 16th, 2018 planning commission minutes, January 11th, 2018 downtown development authority minutes, January 11th, 2018 convention and visitors bureau minutes, the renewal of the health and ancillary insurance as approved and recommended by the Finance Committee, the renewal of the property and casualty insurance as approved and recommended by the Finance Committee, the approval of the change of the IP transport to GPW as approved on option 2 as recommended for council approval by the Utilities Committee, the purchase of the Cisco Edge routers, 2 of them from contractor Megahertz for a total purchase price of $69,584.12 as recommended for approval by the Utilities Committee, purchase of the fiber blower from Green for $36,665.50 as recommended by the Utilities Committee, the approval of the FTTX pricing as presented and recommended to council by the Utilities Committee, as well as the 2 new items, which is approval of the airport layout plan as recommended to council by the Airport Committee, as well as the approval of the amended police vehicle lease purchase through enterprise lease purchase for the $61,054.84 as recommended by the Public Safety Committee. That would be your consent agenda motion for clarification.
thank you. And we have Mr. Dickinson making the motion, Ms. Malcolm as a second. Do I have all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries with 1 opposition. I'm sorry? Yes. Public forum, public comments. Number 1 on the agenda is Geraldine Smith. Ms. Smith, come to the front. Hey, Big Mama. Could you please state your name and address for the record? Although I have it here, just,
I am Geraldine Smith. I am called Big Mama. I think now is the time that we should get a new chief of the City of Monroe Police Department.
yes, ma'am.
And, you know, a lot of things I do not like. A lot of things I do not like hearing. I have tried to talk to him. I have tried to see him. There was all kinds of excuses not to, or miscommunications. I don't want to get into the details right now. But, you know, when you got a police chief that does not want to talk to someone in the community about something, there's a problem. And it should be rectified. It's either, you know, put him on some type of a warning or something. Because, you know, the things that I hear in the community about him, you know, I don't like that. His job is to protect and serve and listen to people in the community, not necessarily being a police snitch. I just wanted to talk to him because of a magazine he was in about drugs and other things. You know, because I wanted to see, could he be a middleman for me to get an article in the magazine about being addicted to drugs, not necessarily because you get on drugs yourself. You can get addicted to drugs from the doctor, not necessarily yourself. And that was the main reason I was trying to talk to him, but I kept getting the runarounds about it. I should have brought the magazine with me with his picture in it, but I didn't bring it, but I've got it at home. And I don't think that's right. If he's gonna get paid by the city to protect the people in the city, he should listen to the people instead of dodging them. I want to say some more stuff, but I'm going to leave it alone. You know, he know what he's doing. But I'm here to let you know, just because he's the police chief, there's a line that he should not cross. He gets paid to do a job, not do what he want to do. You know, and I don't want him and his little buddies to come hounding me because I don't want to say what I want to say while everybody is here. You know, I'm trying to leave it alone because I know this is recorded and it's put on TV. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
But if anybody want to ask me a question or two, I'll tell you. But it'll be off camera. You know, I'm not scared to say what I want to say, but you know, I'm trying to keep things on low.
Yes, ma'am.
And I don't want to embarrass the community either. Bit less the chief of Monroe City Police.
Yes, ma'am, and I appreciate your coming up. Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Bradley Griffin. How are you, sir?
Good, thank you.
Could you please state your name and address?
Yes, my name is Bradley Griffin. My address is 3510 Concord Road in Newborn, Georgia, 30056.
Great. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
You have 5 minutes.
Perfect. I actually just want to keep my remarks brief. I wanted the opportunity tonight to get to introduce myself to each and every one of you, council members, as well as the attendees of this meeting tonight. I'm the Republican candidate for the United States House of Representatives here in the 10th Congressional District. I'll be challenging Jody Heiss. I don't believe that he's qualified for the position that he's been holding. I think that there's numbers of reasons why he needs to be replaced in that position. However, in an effort to keep this brief, I just wanted to mention you can learn more about me at bradleygriffin.us, where I have key positions and my stances on those positions listed. You can also follow me on Twitter at Griff for Congress. Again, I wanted to thank you. My door is open. I would like to meet with every one of you if you wanted to have a discussion about different issues, different causes, different concerns in the city, and how we can help to alleviate that by working together and bringing those messages to the federal level. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
And moving along. Public hearing, Mr. Kelly, please come up front, please. Regarding the variance at 206 North Midland, you want to take it from here?
Yes, sir, thank you. Well, let me get to the right thing on my agenda. Since it's a PDF, it's a little more difficult tonight. I was already on the next item. Okay, this is petition number 1700570. The applicant Lori Volk of Georgia Marquee Investments LLC requests a variance to allow the lot size of R1A zoning to be less than 7,500 square feet on a four-lot development as she wishes to do. They would like to build those 4 houses on 0.63 acres with a lot size around 6,880 square feet. As I mentioned previously last week, that's about it's less than a 10% variance from the 7,500 square feet that'd be required. The property has 130 feet of road frontage on North Midland Avenue and 208.94 feet of road frontage on East Highland Avenue, 132.4 feet of road frontage on North Madison Avenue. Code Department recommends approval. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended denial. But let's just get that on the record. Continuing on here, extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the subject property because of size, shape, and topography are really none. The literal application of this ordinance does create an unnecessary hardship. The variance would not cause substantial detriment to public good or impair the purposes or the intent of the ordinance. The variance does confer upon the property of the applicant a special privilege denied to other properties in the district. Actually, that should say does not. Sorry about that, because anybody can apply for the same variance. The special circumstances surrounding the request for the variance are the result of acts by the applicant. The variance is not a request to permit a use of land, buildings, or structures which is not permitted by right or by conditional use in the district. The zoning proposal is not consistent. I'm going to have to work on my typing and reading skills. The zoning proposal is consistent with the construction and design standards adopted by the City of Monroe. The variance is a minimum variance that will make possible an economically viable use of the land, buildings, and structures. I put some notes at the bottom. The minimum house size would be 1,300 square feet on this infill development. The materials and design may be specified as conditions of the variance, and the proposed materials and designs exceed those required by the zoning ordinance. That is the proposal for this variance.
Thank you. Well read. Don't go anywhere. Are there any questions for Mr. Kelly?
You said the code recommend for approval and planning and zoning recommend for denial?
Yeah, my recommendation would be for approval, but the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended for denial. Yes, that's correct.
Did they have a reason that they recommend to deny it?
Well, I really don't want to speak for their reasoning, except for the only thing that they did mention was that it was 4 lots, and they thought that was too many. That was the biggest point that was made for the recommendation for denial.
Are there any other questions from the council?
What are the, I understand that you're looking at 1,600 minimum square feet, is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, can I interrupt? Wouldn't it be more appropriate for these questions to come after the hearing?
Actually, yes and no. The first questions were for Patrick. We'll come back to you in a second, Ms. Volk. as the meeting is open, we do have a comment from Mr. Whitholder. If you would like to come up and talk, and then we'll talk with Ms. Volk and Ms. Sinclair. You're good, Patrick? Thank you.
Point of order, Mayor. It is appropriate for the applicant in order to present their presentation first to public comment.
Public comment will wait. Ms. Volk?
I'm Lori Volk. I'm the developer of the property. Jane Sinclair will be the builder. At the risk of being redundant, you already know the details. Can I tell you anything else, answer any questions that you might have about the project?
Minimum square feet.
The houses that we want to build, well, they're really cottages. We're looking at probably 1,700 square feet average.
And each lot's going to be about 6,800, the way you've got it drawn. Is that correct?
Yes, it will be 6,880 square feet.
And there'll be an alleyway to access each garage that will be at the back, the way I read it.
Yes, what we have in mind is to have 2 facing Madison Avenue and 2 facing Midland Avenue with a back alley driveway off of Highland.
Okay. And that would be off Highland. Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Although we rent style houses, are they gonna be 2-story? What type of house are they gonna be?
Have to be 2-story.
That is still undecided. There will be 3-bedroom, 2 baths, but whether or not they're going to be 2-story, we're still working on that. We've had requests that they not be 2-story. So we're really undecided as far as whether they're going to be 2-story or ranch style. We might mix it up.
So the examples that we have with the names of the Cherry Hill or Willow Oak, those are not applicable at this point because you're not sure?
Those are examples. They will be very similar to that, or they might be. Do you want to help answer that?
Style. It's just that we've had several requests for a ranch just because of older people wanting to move into town. So really, if we start one that's a 2-story, but somebody comes along and wants a 1-story, then we'll do that. But we'll have to stay within that square footage of the lot. So,
excuse me, the style will be the same.
the style will be the same.
images
For
of the
clarification, I want to be absolutely sure that we're talking about the same thing. To me, it doesn't matter whether they're single story, story and a half. I just want to make sure they look appropriate, because what you presented is you're going to build these historic-looking cottages, steep roof pitches, that sort of thing. We wouldn't want these things to get built and all of a sudden they're, 4 and 12 roofs and don't look anything like what you presented. So what you're assuring us is those illustrations that you gave us, that's what these cottages are going to look like.
Right.
Because this is an infill development that's supposed to, it's not a historic district, but supposed to look historically correct and look very much like the house that you constructed
Down the
across
street.
from the
Yes.
school down the street.
Right.
So you're assuring us
Yes.
that's what you're going to do?
Absolutely.
Okay, good enough.
Okay, do we have any more questions?
So currently, the way the rezone, Patrick, is presented, where did he go? Oh, there you are.
Sitting close by.
The minimum square footage has been established for this development?
The minimum square footage required, since it's a business zoning classification, they're not asking for a rezone, would require R1A minimum house size standards by the zoning ordinance. So you can build a house in practically all our zoning categories, but the minimum requirement for B2 would be the R1A standards, which is 1,300 square feet. Now, you can make it a condition
Right,
of
that's
the
what I'm-
variance that they build 1680
Exactly.
or whatever the number is that they've got
Right.
listed in their application.
And there's no provision for vinyl siding?
No, there's,
We're not planning
Okay.
to.
It's going to be very similar to the one on Midland that's down by the school. I
Which is
built that
lovely.
in '06.
Right.
It'll be very much like that. That style, front porch, and it's going to have a carport in the back or a garage if somebody wants to close it in. So,
Do we have any more comments from the council?
If I understand that, you would not have a problem if we put restrictions on that says vinyl siding is not allowed. It has to
oh,
be
no, not at all.
that type of hardy plank or similar type siding or stone or brick, right? And that we would have a minimum house size of, you said 1680?
I don't know what you.
I think that's 6880 is the.
Oh, the lot
square
size.
footage of the lot. What we're looking at is a house size of 1,700 square foot. It could be 1650, it could be 18.
Yeah, right.
Okay. One more time, council?
And you'd be okay if we listed the conditions of the rezone to include the details of your cottage construction that you've listed on your application? Being party and hardwood floors, and although we normally don't get into interior components.
Okay. I think Mr. Holder wants to speak in favor of the variance. Sorry we moved you from public comments, and then I called you one time.
That's right.
It's like the Episcopal Church. We stand, we sit, we stand, you know.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes,
I'd just
sir.
like to speak in favor of this variance. I think it's a good use for the lot. It's been on the market for a while, and I think it works better with 4 units than it does with 3. And what makes it work so well is the shared drive coming in off of Highland. So with the space you gain from the shared drive, I think, you know, the 10% decrease is justifiable. So I'd very much like to see council grant this variance. Thank you.
Thank you so much. By the way, we're looking forward to the development beginning over in front of the mill, too. Thank you for coming. Any others who'd like to speak in favor of the variance? Do we have anyone who'd like to speak against the variance? Hearing none, let's move forward. Do we have a motion to approve?
I wish to make a motion, Mr. Mayor. I move that we approve the variance and that we add the restrictions that are detailed in their construction detail, hardy plank siding, and these are crawl space, not slab houses. Those are the 2 exterior requirements. And, well, yeah, that's it. That's the motion.
Second. I have a motion by Mr. Dickinson, a second by Mr. Ross Bradley. Are there any discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries with hardy plank, crawl space, and construction details is laid out in the plans. Thank you, ladies, for coming. We're excited to see what you do with it. Moving along to the rezone annexation of 389 Jean Bell Road. I want to refer to Mr. Kelly.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. This is petition number 1700568. The applicant, Darrell Perry, requests a rezone and annexation for property located at 389 and 0 Jean Bell Road, address assigned by the county. The property has approximately 575 feet of road frontage on Jean Bell Road. The property is presently zoned R1 County. The requested zoning classification is R1A City. The requested zoning will permit a use that is suitable in view of the use and development of adjacent and nearby property. A change of zoning will not adversely affect the existing adjacent property. The subject property does have restricted economic use as currently zoned. The change of zoning will not create an excessive or burdensome use of existing streets, transportation facilities, utilities, or schools. The property is in the county, therefore the future land use plan does not apply. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of this with the listed conditions down at the bottom of the petition page in front of you. Code's recommendation at this point would be to study the issue further based on environmental concerns of the floodplain, and also to potentially recommend that we do not approve it based on that concern and the fact that it's been before us before and was considered and turned down at that time as well, at least once. I don't know if there was an additional application or not. But the recommended conditions are that it be a 55 and older development, 1,650 square feet minimum house size, no vinyl siding, except for in the soffits and overhangs. The property does, as proposed, does meet the requirements of R1A zoning. But that is the motion, or that is the petition.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Kelly? Don't go anywhere yet.
Yes, do the property meet all the criteria for being rezoned and annexed?
Well, it's kind of a tough question. It's a property, and it's outside the city, so he can ask for both. I mean, I don't know what criteria you might be talking about, but that's the only two criteria you need to request a rezone and annexation, is to be outside the city limits and want to change the zoning.
And didn't you say the plan and recommend approval?
They did.
And you recommend denial?
Yes, sir.
Now, what reason you say you recommend denial?
Well, the environmental concerns and the fact that it had been denied in the past.
And I know one concern in the past was that in order for the EMS and everyone to access, they were going to have to go outside the city to get back into the city to service this property.
I believe the chief had, brought that up on the past annexation.
Would you clarify that? What you mean go outside the city to get back in the
Well,
city?
in order, they would have to leave the city limits and go outside into the county to access back into this subdivision if we annexed it into the city. The only avenue to get to it is to go outside.
Do you know approximately how far they would have to go outside the city before they'd be back in the city?
I didn't understand your question.
You said they got to leave outside the city, and if we annex it, to get back in the city, they would have to leave the
Well,
city.
but the roadways to access this property, even if it's annexed into the city, the perimeter access roads are outside the city limits. Am I correct?
Yeah, and I believe it'd be less than half a mile total, but
Right. I know it's-
basically you're going around Carver Middle School.
Right.
From the city limits wherever they end on Church Street, which has been extended now. Well, actually, the road wasn't annexed on Joe Dixon's annexation, but that city limit would be somewhere across from Carver Middle School, and then go around all the way to this, which has 575 feet of road frontage, depending on where they put the driveway. That'd change the total.
That was just one concern during the last rezone. It's not anything
Are there any other questions for Patrick? Is the applicant here? Yes, sir. Would you like to come forward? Would you like to speak to the variance?
Yes, sir, I would.
Your name and address, please.
My name is Darrell Perry, and I'm 1620 Kellytown Road in McDonald, Georgia. First of all, I'd like to say thank you, Councilman and Mayor, for listening to me, and y'all being here, and thank you for what y'all do for the city. I'd like to tell you thank you. And I guess I'd like to start out and say, I've owned this property for approximately 12 and a half years. And I have been in here once in 2015 asking for annexation. And I think Ms. Malcolm is correct. I think, at that time, the city was actually, the line was back further, but I think now we're only like she's talking about going out of the city. I think we're only talking about maybe 1/8 of a mile at the very most. And I mean, just in the back part of my property actually touches the city. Now, you can't access through that way because that subdivision has not been done. The sewer actually runs straight through my property. And, with the sewer going through there, when I actually purchased the property 12 and a half years ago, we felt like, that we could get this thing zoned and annexed, and I wasn't even going try to bring it into the city. It was going to be a county thing, and then we found out that we couldn't tie into the sewer because it was not in the city. And what I'm asking, is, like Patrick said, annexation into the city. I'm wanting to build 55 and older homes in here. I think the code for the city, I think it's 1,300 square feet. I think most of these homes that actually, that would like to build, if y'all would approve this, will be anywhere from 1,600 to roughly 2,100 square feet. They'll be all brick homes. I did say in the planning and zoning that it would be, I might have to go in the soffits with some vinyl, but if y'all, I'd be glad to take that out. We'd use hardy plank, but it'd be 4-side brick. I'm just not down here just trying to put some junk in the city. I want to do something that's nice. This 55 and older thing, I didn't really know much about it. The last time I tried to come down here and get rezoned, I didn't have that in there. But since then, my mother and father-in-law, they actually live in a 55 and older subdivision, and it works out very good. And this is the reason that I'd like to be in the city. One, to have sewer, but I mean, y'all have everything. It's like a one-stop call. I mean, y'all have the sewer, y'all have, everything. Y'all have the electricity, the water, and everything. So, if they were in there, I mean, it makes it easy. But this 55 and older community that's been very nice for my mother and father-in-law, it's been, having smaller lots. They'll all these homes will be, single-story homes. You'll have somebody cutting the grass and all, and, provided what y'all say, it would be a gated community, or, I didn't know how the access would be that for the fire department, but I mean, I can do either way on that. I guess give them a code, if that's what we needed to do on that. The other thing is with the 55 and older, I feel like the impact, as far as the schools, we're not going to impact the school systems, with that community. They've run sidewalk all the way down, I think, Church Street to pretty much the school down there now. I mean, so people would have access, where they could, walk. I'm wanting to build the homes. I'm going to have like walking trails and all down there. I'm going to have walking trails. Of course, we're going to have sidewalk on both sides because that's a city ordinance. I mean, like I said, I'm not wanting to come in here and build junk. We're wanting to build something that's very nice, something that the city would like having down here in the city, something that that older folks would like to live in, and it's going to be a little upkeep. No yard upkeep. The houses, like I said, we can go with hardy plank or, for the soffits, all brick homes, wood windows. We're not coming in here with some cheap vinyl windows and all that stuff. It's not going to be nothing like that. And as far as the floodplain area, I know that there, if we've got, you've got 32 acres basically with the land. You have 32 acres. We're asking for 45 lots. And if you take the 32 acres and you figure that, it comes to about 1.4 lots based on the 32 acres. All right. If you get the R1A zoning, that could be 5 lots. 5 lots to the acre, if I'm reading my stuff right. All right, well, 5 lots to the acre, you take 5 times 32, that's 160 lots could go in there. So I'm taking out for the floodplain. In the floodplain, I mean, you can see on the plans here that we have, all that's been considered. So if you was getting 2 lots to the acre, if you were getting 2 lots to the acre, and you say, well, Darrell, there's only, out of 32 acres, there's only 20 usable acres. Okay, well, if you do 20 times 5, based on y'all's zoning, if you did that, 20 times 5, that'd be 100 lots. Okay, if you did 3, you know, I mean, you'd have 60 lots, basically. But all I'm asking for, it would be like 45 lots. And I mean, I think the impact of the city, you know, I mean, as far as the sewage, and won't be any impact really on the schools. And I just think this would be a good thing to have in the city. I mean, I know, and I'm asking for y'all to really consider this because, I mean, like I said, I'd really like for this to work out and be here for the city. I mean, y'all got a beautiful city down here, and I'm certainly not wanting to come down here and put some junk in here that, you know, that I wouldn't want to live in myself. And that's pretty much it. And I mean, I just ask for y'all's consideration, and I'd appreciate y'all's vote, you know, to annex this thing into the city and rezone this for me.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Are there any questions for Mr. Perry? Is there anyone here who'd like to speak in favor of the variance? Is there anyone here who'd like to speak in opposition? Hearing none, do I have a motion? We'll declare the public portion of the meeting closed. While we've done that, do I have a motion to approve or deny his
I had a question for staff.
Yes.
Would this development be in our electric service area?
No, sir. It's just outside the electric service territory.
So, is it in the water service area?
Yes, sir.
So,
Did I understand right, electricity would be EMC?
That is an EMC territory.
That's EMC client for electricity.
Any other questions for staff? Any other comments? I'm accepting motions.
I have a question for Mr. Perry. Will these be owner occupied?
Yes, sir. There will be no rental houses. I mean, this is all property that's going to be sold to individuals. I mean, you know, we're not building this for no rental property.
Just point of order, we're under, Mayor, for clarification, move on to new business. Item number 1, the annexation of this property. That's what's under consideration for the council now, I believe.
Yes, sir.
All right, so Mr. Mayor, I have a motion with respect to the annexation. After looking at this thing in detail, considering all the issues with this particular property, what I think is a lack of a real detailed plan, and where the city is headed in the future with its planning, at this point, I'm going to make a motion to deny the annexation.
Okay, I have a motion to deny the annexation by Mr. Dickinson. Do I have a second?
second, Mr. Mayor.
I have a second by Mr. Ross Bradley. Did I hear that correctly? I heard a voice. Are there any comments, any discussion?
Is this not the same project we just approved last month? Is this similar to the same project we just approved last month?
This is a different piece of property.
Other than it being a different piece of property, are the same requirements, are they the same, similar to the requirements that we had last month that we approved?
And looking only at an R1A zoning, perhaps, but that's why each individual case comes before P&Z and then to City Council. So everyone is taken on a case-by-case basis.
But planning and zoning recommend approval.
Planning and zoning only looks at that parcel within zoning criteria. City Council's role is to expand upon that and see how that zoning criteria fits with your plans and visions.
Do you have any comments, questions? I have a motion and a second. All in favor of denial of the annexation?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion to deny carries with one opposition. Moving next, we would be discussing, well, we don't have the rezone to discuss as the annexation has been opposed. So we move to new business.
Application beer and wine package sales.
I'm missing my application of beer and wine. Thank you. No, I have an application. Sorry, thank you. Refer this to Mr. Rosenthal, please.
This is application for beer and wine package sales for the Amico Food Mart located at 914 North Broad Street. Mr. Mayor, that application is in order.
Thank you. Is the business owner here? That's good. Thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Ross Bradley, a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Garrett. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for coming, quick and painless. Application beer and wine sales at the Rite Aid, store number 11825. I'll refer this to Mr. Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an application for beer and wine package sales for the Rite Aid located at 703 West Spring Street in Monroe, Georgia. That application is in order.
Thank you so much. Do we have the business owner here, represented for Rite Aid? Yes, ma'am. Thank you for coming. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Dickinson.
Second.
Second by Mr. Dyer.
Mr. Adcock.
Mr. Adcock. I'm sorry, Wayne. I have a motion and a second. Are there any discussions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Moving to the appointment of the tree board to reappoint Ms. Susan Brown. She's very active in our community, and we do appreciate her service. This will be a 3-year term expiring in March of 2021. Ms. Brown would like to continue. Could I have a motion to reappoint her?
Make a motion.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I have a motion by Mr. Dickinson and a second by Mr. Larry Bradley. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All opposed? Motion carries. Second reading of our driveway ordinance. Refer this to you, Mr. Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. This is Mr. Kelly's ordinance amendment that he brought before you to amend the development regulations. I'll refer any specific questions to him, but I'll provide the second reading. This is an ordinance to amend the code of the City of Monroe, Georgia to revise our development regulations as follows. Be it ordained by the Mayor and Council of the City of Monroe, Georgia that Article 9, Section 9.16 is hereby amended as follows. Retitling of 916 from driveways to access management driveways to read as follows. And Section 2 by repealing said Section 9.16.1 in its entirety and inserting in lieu thereof a new Section 9.16.1 which shall read as follows. The remainder of Section 916 shall be left unchanged. 916 access management driveways following standards shall apply to land subdivision development except for single-family dwelling units or industrial development where the primary access is from a state or federal highway or a thoroughfare classified as a major collector or arterial in the City of Monroe development regulations. These standards shall apply unless a more restrictive standard is required by the Georgia Department of Transportation. 9.16.1 joint and cross access, Section 1, Section 2, Sub A, Sub B, Sub C, Section 3, Sub A, Sub B, Section B, minimum driveway setbacks at intersections, Section C, minimum access requirements, Sub 1 and Sub 2, which delineates minimum number of access points, Section 3, townhouse and multifamily developments, Section 4, manufactured home park, Sub A, B, and C, Section D, separation of access points, Sub 1, Sub A and B, Sub 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6, Section E, emergency access. All ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith are hereby repealed. This constitutes the second reading, Mayor, this 13th day of February.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Quick and painless, I'm sure. Any questions?
I have a question. If I understand this right, there's like one section of this ordinance is to be removed and replaced by another section. and I just wondered if someone could explain the significant changes from one to the other.
I'll refer that to Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal.
Thank you again. And that's a great question. What we're basically doing is taking our old ordinance, which allowed a little bit too frequent street cuts, driveway spacing and things like that, and we're moving towards the areas that are most desirable and most likely to develop, which is our highway corridors and our main thoroughfares, and requiring that those driveways be spaced out a greater distance with access roads or interconnecting parking to allow circulation off the street in order to reduce traffic on the street. That's the vision and planning that we've been having on those items, and we just thought it'd be, right now would be the best time before some of these really large tracts start to develop with a pattern that we no longer desire. And similar to, as the example most people bring up, the Spring Street corridor going between town and Highway 138.
So does this ordinance, though, these changes we made, only apply to main thoroughfares?
No, it says here that it applies to pretty much, let's see, federal highways, thoroughfares classified as major collectors, or arterial streets. So it doesn't take into neighborhood roads, but it does take into account pretty much all the other road classifications in
So
our
what is an
development regulations.
arterial street? I'm sorry, Patrick.
Like
Give me
Spring
an
Street or Charlotte Rowell Boulevard. Sorry, I'm trying to talk into the microphone and look at you at the same time. Yeah, well, those would be highways. Arterial street would be maybe the outskirts of Church Street.
Let me ask you, is McDaniel Street, what would be covered under this?
That would be a collector street. It would be addressed in here, but I don't see that, seeing as how there's not a whole lot of commercial zoning on that street developing in a commercial fashion that would require this access management strategy.
I guess what I don't understand, and I tried reading, but I probably don't understand it all. But if this, I'm just using McDaniel Street as an example, okay? Does that mean that if someone can't do driveways close by anymore?
No, sir, because it does not cover single-family residences. So if you have a single lot with a single house on it and you're on a road, you can access that road because that's your right to put a driveway in for that property. Where the confusion was lying last time we discussed this was where it said it didn't apply to subdivisions. And that was because subdivisions are a large tract and they're going to have an entrance or two, and those would require some separation. But the individual houses inside on the interior of that subdivision as they develop on neighborhood streets would all have a driveway, and there wouldn't be these spacing requirements on an individual house. And to be perfectly honest, I wrote this best I could. I don't 100% have it all down pat yet either. This was just the best option that we could come up with in order to avoid a detrimental development pattern.
So, for example, St. Ives is a development, it's gated, but there were some exterior lots, maybe 3, 4, 5, that are being advertised for sale that actually are part of that subdivision but front on McDaniel.
Right.
Would this, moving forward, if a development were to be developed on a street like McDaniel, would it prohibit those 4 curb cuts from being cut on that?
It wouldn't prohibit those 4 or 5 or 3, however
Well, I
many there are.
know, not on St. Ives,
on
but
that,
I'm saying
but
on a new development.
It does require interior facing lots
Okay.
on new developments. It doesn't allow for that
For-
continual
Right.
access along the road and you wouldn't subdivide it and put parcels facing the road so you have that driveway problem.
Okay.
So just follow what you just said. If this had already been in effect, what they're doing at St. Ives would not have been allowed.
On those lots, that's correct. Yeah.
They would have had to have put a short
They would-
street in and
Right.
done cul-de-sacs, and the lots would have backed up to the street, but not been accessed from the street.
Correct.
Okay.
Are there any questions or comments? I really wish you would have done this prior to that Spring Street development, because all those curb cuts between Breedlove and Pinecrest. As
I'm
cars are
pretty
going
old,
everywhere.
but I don't think I'm prior to that Spring Street development.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I don't guess we have any more questions. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the driveway ordinance amendment.
I have a motion
Second.
to approve.
Second.
By Ms. Malcolm, a second by Mr. Dickinson. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Moving along to disclosure, that we have the potential of conflicts of interest for the 2018 CDBG application. I'm going to refer to Mr. Garrett first to read his conflict of interest statement.
As required by the Georgia Department of Community Affairs Guidelines of Conflict of Interest, I am publicly disclosing that I live at 1244 South Madison Avenue. I own that property. Furthermore, I was not part of the meeting select process to choose this targeted area. I will abstain from this voting matter regarding to this project during the application phase and if it is funded.
Thank you, and I'll refer to Mr. Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mayor. As required by the Georgia Department of Community Affairs Guidelines for Conflicts of Interest, I am publicly disclosing here tonight that I am the managing member and a beneficial interest owner of Old Monroe Mills LLC, which does own multiple parcels and properties within the proposed target area. Furthermore, I am declaring and publicly disclosing that I was not part of the meeting or selection process that chose the proposed target area. Myself, along with my office, will abstain from all legal counsel matters regarding this project during the application phase and if it is funded. And Mr. Probst has already addressed the issue of retaining conflict counsel to the extent necessary and needed. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't need any further action, but I do need you to come back, Mr. Rosenthal, to read the resolution of that CDBG 2018 application, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be happy to read this for you. City of Monroe, fiscal year 2018 CDBG application resolution. Whereas the Georgia Department of Community Affairs has established the Community Development Block Grant Program to assist cities and counties with improvements to public facilities, economic development, and housing in Georgia. And whereas there exists in the city a need to provide water and sewer improvements to the City of Monroe's fiscal year 2018 CDBG target area. Now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and Monroe City Council that the city supports the application for fiscal year 2018 CDBG funds and that the city will apply for these funds for water and sewer improvements in the city's fiscal year 2018 CDBG target area. The city commits to the required cash match for the project, $1,000 cash for the required audits, and all additional cash and or in-kind services needed to complete the project over the grant amount. Be it further resolved that the mayor is authorized and directed to act as the official representative of the city to act in connection with the application, to be responsible for compliance with the applicable state and federal requirements of the program, and to provide such additional information as may be required. Be it further resolved that the mayor is authorized to enter into an agreement for engineering and grant administration services relating to the application and subsequent grant if funded, and to execute the application and the other required documents on behalf of the city, including the grant award package if funded. Be it further resolved, the city commits to own, operate, and maintain all the proposed improvements. Be it further resolved, the city hereby adopts the citizen participation plan of the Georgia Department of Community Affairs to ensure public involvement in the CDBG process. Be it further resolved, the city hereby acknowledges that the proposed project is subject to the requirements of Section 3 of the Housing and Urban Development Act of 1968 as amended at 12 U.S.C. 170 LU Section 3, and in accordance with the Georgia Department of Community Affairs Section 3 compliance plan, will to the greatest extent feasible comply with all Section 3 requirements. Be it further resolved, the city hereby acknowledges that the proposed project is subject to the requirements of Title 8 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, the Fair Housing Act, as amended, Section 104B2 of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended, and Section 105B3 of the National Affordable Housing Act of 1990. The city hereby commits to affirmatively furthering fair housing to the greatest extent feasible. Be it further resolved that the city hereby acknowledges that the proposed project is subject to the requirements of Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 as amended, Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, and the Architectural Barriers Act of 1968. The city hereby commits to comply with all Section 504 requirements to the greatest extent feasible. Be it further resolved that the proposed water and sewer improvements are in conformance with the City of Monroe's comprehensive plan and are not inconsistent with the city's service delivery strategy. Be it further resolved that a true and dedicated commitment has been made to the project for the successful completion of the above improvements for the citizens, especially the city's low to moderate income citizens. So resolved this 13th day of February 2018. That is the resolution, Mayor.
Thank you so much. Before you go anywhere, do we have any questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for full year 2018 CDBG application.
So moved.
Have a motion by Mr. Little, Mr. Nathan Little. And a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Larry Bradley. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Next, we'll have a resolution for the 6-month R1A zoning moratorium that we discussed earlier this month. Mr. Rosenthal, would you read that, please?
I'll be happy to. I'll refer any questions to Mr. Probst, or I'll be happy to answer them myself as well, and I know Mr. Kelly will be happy to answer them as well. This is a resolution of the mayor and the council of the city of Monroe, state of Georgia, to impose a 6-month moratorium on the acceptance of applications for rezoning or annexation to R1A zoning. Whereas the city of Monroe, Georgia has been vested with substantial power to regulate the use of property within the city for the purposes of maintaining the health, moral, safety, security, peace, and general welfare of the city, and whereas the city has the legislative power to adopt reasonable resolutions or regulations relating to property within the city for which no provision has been made by general law and which are not inconsistent with the Constitution of the state of Georgia or any charter provision applicable thereto, and whereas local governments may impose moratoria on zoning decisions, building permits, and other development approvals where warranted, and whereas specifically the Supreme Court of Georgia has held to justify the state and thus in imposing its authority in behalf of the public, it must appear first that the interests of the public generally as distinguished from those of a particular class require such interference, and second, that the means are reasonably necessary for the accomplishment of the purpose and not unduly oppressive upon individuals, citing from the DeKalb County versus Townsend Associates case 243 Georgia 80 1979 at 82, and whereas the mayor and the city council have, as part of planning, zoning, and growth management effort, been in review of the city's current zoning ordinances and studying the city's estimates and projections regarding the anticipated type of development within the city, and whereas the mayor and city council, as part of planning, zoning, and growth management efforts and strategy for the city, have called for continued city staff review and overview of the current mix of housing available and projections on the future mix of housing within the city, and whereas the mayor and city council do not intend to frustrate developments that have been recently rezoned, nor to affect any development rights that have vested as of the date of this resolution, and whereas the mayor and city council recognize the need for zoning classification in the city referred to as medium lot residential district R1A, and whereas the mayor and city council recognize the stated goal of the R1A zoning classification is to provide for areas of medium density detached single-family residential uses, to recognize and protect the moderate lot size, street grid based and highly pedestrian character of the city's turn-of-the-century neighborhoods and subdivisions, to reinforce the traditional residential development pattern characteristic of the historic areas of the city, to permit compatible accessory uses which normally complement balanced and attractive residential uses, to stabilize and protect owner-occupied housing and encourage a suitable environment for family life, and to protect moderate density single-family residential areas from encroachment of higher density residential and incompatible non-residential uses. And whereas the mayor and city council recognize that recent rezones and annexations of property in the city to the R1A classification do not support the stated goals of the R1A zoning classification, but instead lend themselves to isolated and remote tract developments that do not promote the street grid of the city, nor the highly pedestrian character of the city's turn-of-the-century neighborhoods. And whereas the mayor and city council believe that these recent R1A rezones and annexations of property in the city will instead create more suburban-type sprawl that increases traffic congestion and discourages pedestrian walking throughout the city, and such developments will not reinforce the traditional residential development patterns characteristic of the much desired historic areas of the city. And whereas comparatively dense developments associated with R1A zoning not centrally located in the city's core downtown area potentially impact the city resources and city services, such as water, sewer, traffic, and public safety, in a disproportionate level as compared to other forms and zonings of residential development, such as R1. And whereas the mayor and city council are concerned the health and well-being of the citizens of the city could be negatively impacted by uncontrolled development and zoning of R1A throughout the city, and whereas the mayor and city council hold a strong interest in growth management so as to promote the traditional police power goals of health, safety, morals, aesthetics, and the general welfare of the city, and in particular, lessening the congestion of city streets, security of the public from dangers, promotion of health and general welfare, protection of the aesthetic qualities of the city, and facilitation of the adequate provision of transportation and other public requirements. And whereas the mayor and city council hold a strong belief in maintaining public objectives of aesthetics, conservation of the value of existing lands and buildings within the city, making the most appropriate use of land and other resources, preserving neighborhood characteristics, enhancing and protecting the economic well-being of the community, facilitating adequate provisions of public services, and preserving resources of the city. And whereas the mayor and city council hold a strong belief in developing a cohesive, coherent policy regarding land use in the city and intend to promote community development through stable, balanced growth for the prosperity of the city as a whole. And whereas the mayor and city council are directing city staff to study the current mix of housing, make projections on the future mix of housing and impacts of the same, and to make recommendation as to the contemplated pending zoning regulations and updates. And whereas the mayor and city council are directing city staff to engage a well-qualified land planner to study the current mix of housing within the city of Monroe, projections as to the future mix of housing, impacts of the same, and to make recommendations as to the contemplated pending zoning regulations and updates. And whereas the mayor and city council have determined that it is in the best interest of the city for the protection of the health and public safety that there be implemented a moratorium on the acceptance of applications for rezoning or annexation within the city for zoning into the R1A zoning classification for a sufficient and reasonable time to allow for a comprehensive and in-depth review and modification of the city's comprehensive future land use plan, zoning ordinance, and development requirements related specifically to the R1A zoning classification. And whereas a moratorium on the acceptance of zoning or annexation applications for R1A zone properties is a proper police power while the above referenced studies by the city and city staff are performed, now therefore be it resolved that the mayor and the city council of Monroe do hereby declare and adopt a 6-month moratorium on the acceptance of applications for rezoning or annexation into R1A zone property as follows. Section 1. The preamble of this resolution shall be considered to be and is hereby incorporated by reference as if fully set out herein. Section 2, no plans or applications shall be accepted by city staff for rezoning or annexation of property to be rezoned or annexed in the city into R1A zoning for 6 months from the date of this resolution, the same being through and including August 13th, 2018. Section 3, this moratorium shall have no impact on any land development, building, or construction permits for any property currently zoned R1A at the time of the adoption of this resolution. Section 4, this moratorium shall have no effect on the issuance of permits or site plan reviews for any property currently zoned R1A at the time of the adoption of this resolution. Section 5, during the 6-month period, the city staff shall study the current mix of housing, make projections on the future mix of housing and impacts of the same, and make recommendations as to the contemplated pending zoning regulations and updates to further the city's interest in growth management so as to promote the traditional police power goals of health, safety, morals, aesthetics, and the general welfare of the city. Section 6, during the 6-month period, the city staff is further hereby directed to engage a well-qualified land planner to study the current mix of housing, make projections on the future mix of housing and impacts of the same, and to make recommendations as to the contemplated pending zoning regulations and updates to further the city's interest in growth management so as to promote the traditional police power goals of health, safety, morals, aesthetics, and the general welfare of the city. Section 7, this moratorium shall become effective upon its adoption. So resolved this 13th day of February 2018. That is the resolution, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Take a breath. Do we have any questions or comments for Mr. Rosenthal, Mr. Probst, and Mr. Kelly? Ladies, gentlemen.
Is it feasible to say that we will have a land planner that will participate in this and guide us? And is 6 months long enough, is my question.
Yes, I think 6 months is long enough to go ahead and engage, as stated in this resolution. Engage that third-party planner to get the ball rolling. We'll go ahead and bring back some options for additional zoning classifications to you at a later date. But I would certainly think that can be accomplished by August 13th.
There's 2 paragraphs or 2 whereases in here that I think are inappropriate and not needed in the resolution. I'd be happy to discuss those now or wait if there is a motion to make a amendment to the
If
motion.
you would, go ahead, please.
The way it talks about whereas the mayor and city council recognize the recent rezones and annexations of property do not support stated goals, and the next one after that, believe that recent R1A rezones and annexation property will instead create more blah, blah, blah. I think those two paragraphs as written are very critical of council decisions made recently, and I think they're totally inappropriate to put in a resolution at this point. So I would move those two paragraphs be stricken from the resolution.
I took them to be a reference point of the fact that for the need for the moratorium, because we felt that the size of the tracts were much too large for what we envisioned for R1A zoning. And it was just an example of such, but
That was not the stated intent of.
I mean, it's pretty obvious when it says these recent things will create more suburban-type sprawl, increase traffic congestion, discourage pedestrian walking, and does blah, blah, blah. It just continues to go on and on about how this is going to be bad for the city. And I think that this council made decisions on what they thought was right at the time that would be best for the city as the situation existed. I'm in favor of the moratorium, but I just think these two paragraphs do not, I don't think it serve a purpose. Being here, I think the moratorium resolution is good without those, and I think that's being critical of council actions, which I think is inappropriate.
We can still accomplish the same with these paragraphs struck.
I think it would accomplish the same goal too. Any comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain the motion to impose a 6-month R1A zoning moratorium.
Mr. Mayor, I will make that motion with those two paragraphs stricken from the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Dickinson. I have a motion and I have a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Ross Bradley. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, like sign?
I oppose.
Yes, sir. Motion carries with one opposition. I'm moving to the approval of the 2018 concert series, which is just a real positive to our hometown during the summer. Mr. Rosenthal?
I'll refer these to Ms. Krozik.
Ms. Krozik, didn't see you back there. Thank you for coming.
This is essentially what we talked about last week, but
Right.
Sadie will answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have about the contracts.
Do we have any questions or comments? Well, we're glad you're here. Entertain a motion for the 2018 concert series contracts.
So moved.
Movement for approval by Mr. Bradley, second.
second.
Mr. Ross Bradley, second by Ms. Malcolm. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Great meeting. I did want to introduce, we had a couple of Boy Scouts who were in the back of the room who apparently thought we were long-winded, so they took off, but we were glad they were here. Could I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Malcolm, a second by Mr. Adcock. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.